Simo's location has been exposed and his first two shots have failed to inflict damage on the real Loki, who is right now in position and going for the kill on the White Death. On top of that, the Norse god is much stronger than a lot of us actually expected. For example, we are told Loki is a different breed, in the sense that he had giant's blood within his veins, the monstrous creatures we saw Thor slay in his flashback. Additionally, Loki has the narrative within the Record of Ragnarok story as the god who stood shoulder to shoulder with Thor and Odin in terms of strength, meaning within the Norse mythology, these three are indeed the strongest, and when taking into account all Record of Ragnarok gods, we now have a much better argument for Loki. This is because Thor has been labelled as the strongest Norse god in many panels, and even some overall strongest claims that can actually be argued convincingly, while Odin is literally the main villain of Ragnarok, who showed the willingness to fight both Buddha and Beelzebub at the same time, fellow top tier gods based on most fans' perspective. While nerfed since his primordial god days, at least that's my perspective based on his flashback and overall narrative we currently have. Therefore, Loki being claimed as these two gods equal in strength is quite huge. On top of that, we even see Loki steal Thor's hammer and escape from the raging out berserker while holding on to Brunhilde during his flashback. Quite a wild feat when you really think about it. Therefore, welcome to the Mysterious Weeb YouTube channel, a place with all the Record of Ragnarok content you need, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and of course listen closely as I break down why Simo is in major danger right now in round 11, alongside revealing how Loki became one of the most important gods in the entire story, including him having one of the most overpowered movesets thus far. So in regards to chapter 104 and the preview associated, we didn't actually get one this month, meaning all we currently know is that Loki is right behind Simo, 100% going for the kill, with the claim from the narrator that Loki wields a razor sharp killing intent forged by love, highlighting that the Norse god is locked in and may have been preparing for this moment since he started the fight, with the first full exchange between the two about to occur. But the thing is, we don't know Loki's full abilities thus far seemingly. This is because during the initial explanation, Loki tells us that he has the power to copy anything, in the sense when using his fingertips, labelled as the consuming one, whatever he touches he can then input, followed by using the palm of his hand, the seed of his trickery which it's labelled as, to output the same thing, meaning any weapon or thing he's touched, he should be able to output at some point. Examples we've seen thus far is those chains during the group fight against Buddha, the shield when defending against Simo's sniper shot, and of course Odin, Thor and Hercules, three gods we've seen him directly touch thus far, alongside Thor's hammer on top of that, which we saw him touch in his recent flashback as well. But there's even more. Loki also wields a divine weapon, the ring he wears on his finger, which allows him to overall enhance his copy ability. For example, he tells us that Loki normally is only able to send out 5 copies at a time, but with this ring, he can seemingly make an infinite amount. On top of this, we know Loki has the ability to shapeshift into others as well. For example, we've seen him turn into Thor in the past, turn into Odin, and now recently during his flashback, turn into Siegfried for the sake of setting him up as well. Meaning it's very likely the case that Loki can clone himself with his innate ability as well, explaining how he was able to survive Simo's headshot, as Loki had cloned himself at a different point. But if you look closely, the version of Loki which was hit by the sniper shot actually has the ring on his finger, while the version appearing behind him from this bunny doesn't, meaning Loki seemingly doesn't have the ring on his current body at this point, meaning the amount of copies he can make is limited, which does mean Simo isn't at 100% disadvantage, but this all depends on whether the White Death is aware Loki is behind him, which is very possible considering bro is an absolute beast and does have the home field advantage, which was allowed by Loki all things considered, and apparently based on all the other gods' perspective, is only something Loki would permit if it had given him some type of advantage or if it was part of his overall plan. Meaning, while Simo is a direct counter to Loki based on Brynhilda's perspective, Loki is potentially a counter as well, but we're gonna have to wait and see the reality of that. And to address something I've pointed out in previous videos, technically speaking, Simo is currently on the losing end in this fight. Yes, he's seemingly been dominating in every moment. This is with the scatter shot which took out a majority of Loki's initial summons, and then the piercing shot which took out more summons, and of course the Loki wielding the ring as well. But based on the downsides of his Valkyrie ability, Simo is already taken major damage, losing his kidney and liver for the sake of unleashing these two shots, while Loki, for what we currently know, has not actually been damaged in any way thus far and is definitely in a favourable position right now. And this aspect is not only in regards to the fight against Simo. We learned during his flashback that Loki's narrative and importance to the overall Record of Ragnarok story is amongst the most out of any god we've seen thus far. This is because he transformed into Siegfried and killed Odin's dragon Fafnir. This was for the sake of setting up Siegfried so Loki could have Brynhilda for himself. However, during the confrontation with Odin, we had an interaction between Siegfried and the Norse supreme god, which actually resulted in Odin finding out that Siegfried has the potential to be the primordial god's vessel, what he's been looking for likely thousands and thousands of years, maybe even longer than that, with the 4 treasures within his body, the weapons of the Yggdrasil, the other main primordial gods, reacting to Siegfried in this situation. A whole moment which resulted in Odin to sentence Siegfried to eternal imprisonment within Tartarus, all because of Loki, all things considered, which led Brynhilda down the path of revenge or wanting to get her boyfriend back, naturally resulting in her starting Ragnarok and what we've seen in the story thus far, all being Loki's fault. And then the way Loki is in love with Brynhilda, which I explained in my previous video, highlights his overall impact on everything, which currently no one knows but Loki himself. For example, Brynhilda isn't aware that Loki was the one who set up Siegfried. And all things considered, based on the way Brynhilda kinda baited in Loki in the previous chapters during the build up of this round, was quite wild and does highlight the, I guess, true extent of how much Loki is currently going for the kill, another aspect which relates to why Simo is in major danger. But the question of how the White Death will actually respond to the situation, I've seen some people bring up the possibility that Simo will actually be using a submachine gun in response to this. This is actually connected to the real life events. He didn't just have a sniper, but within his flashback so far in Record of Ragnarok, he was only highlighted of using a sniper, so whether or not he has that submachine gun for more close range isn't currently known. And an aspect that does definitely occur when Simo unleashes a bullet is him being sent flying. So if he was to turn around and fire a bullet, and whether or not it actually hits or anything, Simo could come out with an escape route, and we've already seen his insane movement as well. So it's not, I guess, 100% confirmed to any degree that Loki is going to inflict any damage on Simo here, but I do expect the Norse god to pull out another type of weapon and an all-out exchange between the two being likely to occur. And to address another aspect, during Simo's initial design reveal, we saw the bayonet, the knife on the front of his sniper rifle. However, so far in regards to the official fight so far and the art depicted in relation to Simo's weapon, it doesn't have the bayonet as well. So perhaps that won't be an aspect for close range combat to any degree. And considering Loki being able to turn into this rabbit and get into this position behind Simo, the theory many people have shared about Loki turning into Simo's dog at some point, or potentially always was that dog, does have, I guess, more backing behind it, which could result in one of the most wild moments we've had in Ragnarok so far. But all things considered, I'm still greatly enjoying the fight between Loki and Simo. No complaints so far really. The flashback for Simo was cool. I know a lot of people had some problems going down the PTSD route, but it's fine for me personally. Loki's flashback was definitely one of the most unique, and I would say probably one of the most important we've had so far, so definitely a positive. It's possible we could get more flashbacks for both of them, but likely not in the next chapter. I'm expecting the full dedicated chapter to the insanity and exchanges between these two overpowered fighters. Now with that, I hope you enjoyed. If you haven't already, check out this playlist with all the Record of Ragnarok videos available for you, alongside shout out to these members, the absolute mad lads. That's it guys, peace.